White Sox fans, welcome into Sox on Tap. It's Johnny Nani alongside my guy, NWI Steve, bringing you season 6, episode 20 of the Sox on Tap podcast. Steve, how you doing this fine Thursday evening?
Hey, yo, Jonathan, I continue to exist. We continue to have a bullpen that drives us absolutely insane, hence the title of today's episode.
Yep. This one's titled No Relief. That's, a very strong theme, unfortunately, for the White Sox in recent going since we last talked to yous. But we're going to get into that. We're going to get into some first impressions on Drew Thorpe, talk about another youngster in John Cannon. Discuss, the ever-present rumblings, and not so much rumors, but rumblings surrounding Garrett Crochet, Luis Robert Jr. on the trade front. We'll pay some tribute to a legend, R.I.P. Willie Mays, and take a look at what's on tap next. White Sox go into Motor City for the weekend. Before we do any of that, make sure you're subscribed over on YouTube at On Tap Sportsnet there. Give us a follow on the socials at Sox On Tap and at On Tap Sportsnet. And as always, check out OnTapSportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports, literature, and podcasting needs. Steve, as we jump in, last time we talked was before the White Sox went on their little West Coast road trip. They've been there and now back home for a series. Not much better. Won a game in each of those series, but this bullpen is plaguing them because they had a number of wins that they could have had, and it slipped from their grasp.
I think I saw a statistic that the Sox have blown more leads after the sixth inning than any team in baseball to this point in the season. And, for a team that is where they are right now, 20-55, that's kind of par for the course. One of the easiest ways to be a really bad baseball team is to have a bullpen that cannot hold leads. And then that's kind of what happens and will result in guys like Tim Hill being DFA'd and just a lot of roster churn and burn because you have guys that aren't getting the job done. And even guys that are still here, like Michael Kopech and others, they are handed leads and they can't lock it down. And it's very frustrating to watch.
Yeah, if you remember, if you're a Sox on Tap listener and you were here for the end of our most recent show before this one, my final thought on that show, Steve, was I don't like, nor do I trust a single member of the White Sox bullpen. And you know what? I hate being right when it's in terms of being detrimental to the Sox, but unfortunately there's been a lot of that this year from all of our fronts here at Sox on Tap. But that has reared its ugly head and then some. I expected, blown leads here and there, but there was a stretch when they were playing better ball, right? In that like May stretch, I think we can call it, that they were holding some of these leads and you were seeing a few wins pile up, not nothing that breaks the bank or anything like that. But it's been, about as egregious as you can get when you're talking about those numbers that you had talked about with the blown lead. And then I got a little hat tip to Daryl Van Schouwen over at Chicago Sun-Times. Bullpen 2-10 with a 6.95 ERA over their last 24 games versus the starters 3.01 ERA over their last 13 games. That's a slap in the face to the starters, Steve. And I feel bad for some of these guys turning in solid efforts only to see it go by the wayside late in the game.
I mean, that's really a perfect example of why the pitcher win statistic in the year of our Lord 2024 is just kind of useless, for lack of a better term. I have this argument with my 70-year-old dad all the time because anytime we talk baseball and pitching comes up, the first thing he always asks is what's his record, and I tell him I don't know. I don't look at it because of things just like this. We saw it happen today. Chris Flexen, you're flexing. Did I do that right?
You're flexing.
Oh, hey. He does his job, leaves with a 3-1 lead, covers 18 outs by minimum requirement there. So he does his job. And then what happens after that? Well, almost instantly, the Astros strike back, take a lead that they don't relinquish. And we have seen this so much over the course of the last month here that it is just immensely frustrating the amount of times that they've had leads going into the latter innings and not able to get the job done. And it's been everybody. It's not just been one culprit. It's not just been the middle relief guys or the low leverage guys. It's been everybody up and down that bullpen right there. And it has to be just so demoralizing for this team, given the struggles that they've had, the record that they have, knowing that they've had all these games where they've had an opportunity to win. And if you just take a couple of those out of this stretch right there, things are still bad, but they don't feel as bad as they do right now.
Yeah, and you know what? The thing that goes on with this is that there's not a name, like you had said, that you can go to and feel confident about. Hence my final thoughts from the last episode, and this boiling over into the problems that we're seeing on the field here. Someone like Steven Wilson, I thought that might be, maybe not like an extremely high leverage guy, but a mid leverage guy that could get the job done. He's one that comes in today and starts that inning, like you said, where the meltdown started after Chris Flexen did his job and exited with a lead there. I was, another part of that, Steve, we love our memes here at Sox on Tap, and then I have to resort to sad or angry Stevie Janowski memes from Eastbound and Down. I want to use the happy ones where he's pointing at the band director pointing at the class with that. I want to be, have the excited Stevie because he's a happy-go-lucky personality. I was hoping for that from Steven Wilson, but unfortunately not the case. And you can go up and down, man. We know about Michael Kopech's command issues. Jordan Leisure recently sent down. They had used him quite a bit in some of those high level roles. Do it for a while. It was him in the 8th, Kopech in the 9th, and they converted some, but then it started going by the wayside. And what a absolute soul crusher in that opening game of the Seattle series. That was rough to watch. 4-1, Mr. Jordan Leisure getting in the 9th there.
Yeah, it's tough to see a rookie pitcher, and a guy that I think, for lack of a better term, has been kind of anointed as a future closer. And I think that we've all kind of talked about needing to dial things back and dial back some of the expectations on that. Let a guy come up here and prove that he belongs in that role. And it's not to say that Jordan Leisure has been bad throughout the course of the season. There's been hiccups. That's going to happen, especially with an inexperienced pitcher. But to have that spot right there, and have it go that way, that first game of the Seattle series, I mean, that is a really demoralizing thing to happen. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you've been in the league for 15 years. You give up that home run in that spot to, lose a game that you theoretically had in the bag. It just sucks. And you hope that he's mentally strong enough to overcome that and to continue to put in the work and just realize that, hey, that is, for lack of a better term, kind of an occupational hazard with being a relief pitcher, and that the mindset is, okay, it happened. I'm just going to come back and I'm going to continue to go at guys, and shit's going to happen every once in a while, but it's not going to change my approach and my philosophy.
Yeah, I would just draw back to, the last show that we did, we were anticipating Drew Thorpe's debut, and we're going to get to him in a little bit here, but same thing can be applied across the board for this next wave of White Sox prospects, right? And that even applies to these bullpen guys, applies to position players, starting pitchers. Doesn't matter. Don't anoint them something before it's proven on a consistent basis at the major league level. It'll just be much better for your sanity. It'll be much better for expectations. It's unfortunately, it sucks. You want to see them succeed. You want to see them, the White Sox win games, even in a lost season, right? Nobody likes losing as much as they are. But this is the unfortunate reality of it. So dialing it back a little bit on that front, probably in the best interest of everybody in terms of expectations there. Speaking of that, we got our first taste of Drew Thorpe, a couple tastes of Drew Thorpe so far. Solid first outing up in Seattle in his MLB debut, and then followed that up with a rough one on Sunday in Arizona. Steve, now that we've seen him a couple times, just first impressions, seeing him in the stadium with 3 decks.
The biggest thing for me is, and we've talked about this, just the fact that he is below major league average in terms of his four-seam fastball velocity. And you see some flashes of that changeup and how nasty that thing can be. And everybody knows I love changeup porn. It is one of my favorite things on the baseball diamond there. And it has been on display there. The problem and the issue through these first 2 starts in particular is the fact that he has not been ahead in counts enough consistently to be able to utilize that. When you're 90, 91, 92 with the four-seamer. You can't be behind, guys. You can't be 2-0, 2-1, 3-1, because you're not going to really be in a position to utilize that pitch the way that you would want to. So he's someone that fastball command, and that's something I preach constantly. It is of paramount importance for him. You think about a guy like a Kyle Hendricks and the success that he had during the course of his career. Not the guy that we're seeing here in 2024. But you go back, 2015, 2016, 2017, in that time frame when he was a solid, reliable, dependable pitcher for that other team in town, because he was pinpoint with his control and command, while he was also a guy 90 to 92 with the four-seam fastball. So you can absolutely make it happen, but you can't pitch behind in counts. And that's one of the biggest issues here. And that's something that Drew Thorpe is going to have to improve upon in order to be able to be successful at this level here. So that's really been my biggest takeaway with that. And even in certain instances when he gets guys 0-2, 1-2, kind of letting them back into at bats a little bit. He gets ahead. He's got to find a way to bury guys, but he just can't fall behind consistently.
Yeah, right. All good points. Unfortunately, even though we tempered expectations, I hate to do this and squash hope here, but I'm a little underwhelmed. The changeup, yes, the flashes of it, I can understand, and now I see it, with my own two eyes on actual HD television and not, recorded on the iPhone 3 down at Birmingham. Right? I can understand why that's a plus offering. I totally understand that, and that is encouraging on that front. However, the rest of the stuff. What else do you got, man? Like you had said, you talk about below, it's sitting at like 91. That's not a good fastball. And I just fail to see how in the long run, a changeup can play extremely well off of that. I know the velocity difference is usually around 9 to 8 miles an hour different, right? With that, I really hope you're right on the command and he can buckle that in. But other than that, the other offerings, I was just doing a little perusing through the Baseball Savant page for him. And why are these publications so high on him? Is the changeup really that good that they're anointing him, where they are in Baseball America and MLB Pipeline just based on that one pitch? And my other takeaway would be this ain't AA anymore. The Diamondbacks lineup that's been scuffling all year was able to rock you for, what they did on Sunday. Overall, a bit underwhelmed. Honestly, the best thing besides the changeup, the best thing I saw from him was his athleticism and fielding his position and bailing himself out of an inning. Oh, excuse me, not bailing himself out, picking up his horseshit defense behind him and getting to that ball to end his outing before Lenyn Sosa could go and airmail it back to Chicago. Those are my just initial takeaways from watching him in this small sample size.
So there's two other things I want to touch on real quick as it relates to Drew Thorpe. I had somebody kind of mention to me and say, hey, there's some similarities between him and Lucas Giolito. If you go back to that infamous 2018 season when he was quote unquote the worst pitcher in baseball. And I kind of didn't see it at first just because Giolito to me was always, okay, he's four-seam fastball and then some form or variation of the breaking ball as that primary secondary offering. But then I actually had somebody pull up and do a side-by-side of some of the Savant data as far as like the movement profiles and the velocity band there with the four-seam fastball. Because remember, there was a period of time when Gio's velocity took a tremendous dip before he kind of changed to the short arm action there. And he was, sitting kind of 91, 92, 93. And as far as their vertical and horizontal movement profiles on the pitches, they're very similar. I mean, it's really striking to think about that. So we've seen this happen before. We saw this in Rebuild 2.0, and we did see Ethan Katz and some people make some adjustments there to turn Lucas Giolito into a viable major league pitcher and even an all-star pitcher. So for a guy that's only got 2 starts under his belt, there are some things that we can take away from that and hope and say that, hey, Brian Bannister and the rest of the pitching group, Ethan Katz, that they're going to look at some things and they're going to realize and they're going to say, hey, you know what? We're going to make some changes here. This is what we have to do. This is what we're seeing right now. These are the tweaks that we have to make. So that's, kind of one aspect of it. And your other point there about this is a AA Birmingham, you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of prospect evaluators and people, they were very hung up because there were very gaudy numbers in AA. And the strikeout numbers that he had across AA, going back to when he was in the Padres organization in 2023 and then the early part of this season here. They are, impressive there. But look, you look at the average AA lineup, you're going to have a couple of guys in there that are going to even make it to the major leagues. So that's one of the things, and that's really been the biggest takeaway from the failures of Rebuild 2.0 for me, is that you look at things and you see success at that AA level, and you have to kind of level set on it and take a step back and realize a lot of these guys that maybe these prospects are having success against, they're not going to be major leaguers here. So obviously having success at that level is better than the alternative, but you have to kind of temper that enthusiasm and realize the level of competition that they're doing it against is not going to be the same as what they will face at the corner of 35th and Shields.
Right. Good points. And I just want to say, the book's nowhere near from written on Drew Thorpe. Those are just my initial takeaways. And I guess I just think, in the framework of what you traded away in Dylan Cease and what you're getting back, it leaves me, at least just right now, after 2 starts, and who knows, maybe you could go out in Detroit and fix some of these issues, and we're talking much better about it on our next episode here. But at this point, it's leaving me like, well, I hope in the long run, Sammy Zavala is a guy as a position player, and I really hope Jairo Iriarte is an actual power pitcher because I understand it. Not everybody can be an overwhelming stuff guy, but it'd be nice to have that ceiling of it that you could reach there. And it just, it's not there for Drew Thorpe. So it's going to have to be a lot of, being a fine, mechanic in terms of where he's locating, in terms of command and whatnot. But we'll see what happens. He's slated to start in the upcoming weekend series against Detroit. So we'll get more thoughts on him after a third time through. Let's talk about another youngster. This one much more positive, at least in my mind. Jonathan Cannon. Masterful outing, 8 2/3, almost had the complete game against the Astros in the series opener. Steve, what did you see from him? Everything was moving, in my opinion.
That sound you just heard was the sound of Jonathan Cannon dropping them on the table. Everyone that was on Twitter.com Monday night kind of got to see me extolling the virtues of Jonathan Cannon. I talk about very frequently how much I love pitchers that go out there and pitch with intent, that pitch aggressive and go right after the hitter. Jonathan Cannon is that guy. He was that guy when he first came up. Even the couple of bad outings that he did have, he still was unfazed out there. He was poised, he was aggressive, and he was going right after hitters. He was making mistakes, and he was paying for it at the big league level. That's going to happen with young pitchers. But again, the focus and the intent is there. And that's one of the things that I love to see. And like you said, everything out there was moving. Nothing is straight. And the stuff is really playing up very well. I've looked at some of the Savant data here in his 3 outings since he came up. The sweeper, since he came back up, has been one of the best pitches of any starting pitcher in baseball. Now, obviously, look, we're only talking about 3 appearances here, but that pitch is just destroying hitters right now. And the combination of that with a forcing fastball that he's, 95 with movement and then being able to drop in a changeup right there. I love everything that I am seeing from this guy right now. And this is one of the things that this team and this organization really needs. They need a guy that was not highly touted, that was not a heralded prospect, to be a quote unquote developmental win for the organization. I think kind of in the preseason, he was like in maybe the Sox prospect rankings, like in the 9 to 11 range. If you can have somebody like that develop and emerge to a point where he can be a mid-rotation starter, if he is your number 3, I'm not saying I'm expecting him to be an ace, but if he can hold down a spot in the middle part of your rotation, that is extremely valuable. And again, the mindset and the way that he's going out there attacking hitters with intent, I love to see it. And it really does wonders for my Brian Bannister agenda. Let me tell you that.
I mean, the name's right below you. Everybody knows it. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it at this point. You're a Bannister bot. We get it. But yes, that's a major win for you. And, with Jonathan Cannon here, all those points that you had made, copy that. And then I will also add on that this is the type of stuff that gets me excited and why I was tempered more so when we were just talking about Drew Thorpe. I would much rather have the movement ability on the pitches that Jonathan Cannon has than just one great drop off the table changeup. because Jonathan Cannon's got more velocity, and then you mix in that stuff that moves, it makes him harder to game plan against, because that's what I worry about someone like Drew Thorpe. They're just going to sit dead red and wait for that fastball, wait till he, mislocates one. Well, Jonathan Cannon, guess what? If something's not working for him, he's just going to go to a nasty breaking pitch that will have plenty of movement. And even an aggressive team like the Astros, they couldn't scratch across anything against him there. And you saw it, like we're going to talk about Crochet in a little bit here, but even Garrett Crochet got touched up for 9 hits in his outing because they, after like one pass through the order, they started getting very aggressive on him and swinging very early in the count, especially on fastballs on him. Whereas Jonathan Cannon, good luck. If it looks like a fastball and then that thing dives, if you're a right-handed hitter, that thing dives into the left-handed batter's box, good luck, because the only contact you're going to make is a weak number to the right side of the infield. And that is what gives me hope for someone like Jonathan Cannon. And I just, I love the movement on his pitches. What can I say?
Yeah, it really is impressive to watch and just see, the way that he's able to manipulate the baseball and make it do different things. And a bigger takeaway for me is just that what we have seen from him since coming back up, you have to keep him in this rotation, taking the ball every 5th day. I know Mike Clevenger made a start down in AAA Charlotte, so he's going to be back on the mend here. But what we've seen from Jonathan Cannon of late, this is a guy you have to continue to give him the ball and let him continue to develop at this level right now. Again, I love everything that I'm seeing from him from a mindset standpoint, from a stuff standpoint. This is somebody that wasn't being talked about very much heading into the season. And who knows, in some regards, that might be a good thing. You go back and you think about 2012, Jose Quintana wasn't on anybody's radar. And think about how important he was to this team for a number of years. Obviously, they didn't really accomplish anything with him, but he was a consistent mainstay in that rotation. If Jonathan Cannon could emerge into a guy like that and give you stability in the middle part of your rotation from somebody that you weren't really expecting a lot out of, that's a huge win.
Absolutely. We'll get to see, luckily, this time through Jonathan Cannon. I know Pedro talked about potentially spacing him out after him going the near complete game. But as of right now, he is penciled in to start that series finale coming up in Detroit on Sunday. I agree. Keep giving him the ball. And you know what? If there are hiccups down the road in those dog days of summer, guess what? Charlotte's still there. You can send him back down and then have him come up again if need be. So we'll see how that plays. But so far, so good in his second round of action here with the White Sox. All right, let's keep it on the pitching front. We'll move it over to Crochet. Obviously, he had the outing that I hinted at a little bit earlier with 9 hits allowed against the Astros, but overall still formidable. Gave his team a chance, I would say, and trade speculation is rampant, and it's looking like the White Sox may be inclined to move him, at least per Mr. Ken Rosenthal, even though he frames it as more of an opinion, thought, whatever, on his Fair Territory show that he goes on, right? All that stuff. But we got a question for Minidar here. Appreciate it, as always. But it says, what's the injury history I hear about Crochet? He had TJ like most pitchers. Yes, he did. We'll get into that. And this is part of, what makes this situation so complex. We kind of hinted at it at the last show. I feel like we're going to keep doing it until a decision is made one way or another come that late July trade deadline.
Yeah, so he did have the Tommy John surgery in March of 2022, and then he had shoulder issues going back to his time at the University of Tennessee before he was even drafted. And so, part of the reason why I personally was not very enthusiastic about the pick in June of 2020 was because he did spend a sizable portion of his collegiate career as a reliever. And, that's not a profile that I want, out of a first round pick right there. So between the shoulder and then the Tommy John, there are concerns about it here. And then this kind of ties into the trade speculation here and a lot of the rumors and rumblings that are going around. My position on this has not changed. Garrett Crochet is 24 years old. His first foray into the starting rotation, he is pitching like an ace. He is second in all of baseball in strikeouts. He is first in Ks per 9. He is keeping the walk rate at about 2 per 9. He's not giving up hits. Obviously, he gave up the 9 yesterday. The Astros, as you mentioned, very aggressive approach, going after him early in counts, not allowing him to get ahead of hitters consistently to try to put them away with that cutter and elevated fastball there. That's just good game planning by Houston Astros team. But at the end of the day, you can't, in my opinion, move on from Garrett Crochet unless you believe that he's not going to be able to hold up long-term as a starting pitcher and as a member of your rotation. He's 24 years old. He's pitching like an ace. He's not going to make a lot of money in arbitration because he doesn't have saves on his name from his time as a reliever. So he's not going to cost a lot of money. This is someone you build around. I'm going to say it till I'm blue in the face. If Bannister and the rest of the pitching hierarchy, if they believe he can start, you do not move him. This is someone that you build around. And that is the only justification for trading him, in my opinion, is if the people that handle the pitching for this White Sox organization, from the top to the bottom, have any concern about his ability to hold up long-term in the starting rotation, then and only then do you move him.
I am in agreement with you, and it's going to sound boring if you're looking for a debate here on this show, but my view of it is a more big picture when we're talking about rebuild 3.0, whatever we're in right now, right? You need some foundational pieces. Our guy Voodoo in here with the yay, more prospects. That's exactly how I feel whenever one of these gets tossed out for this. And granted, there are certain names that you can move. Tommy Pham, sure, get rid of him. Eric Fetty, he's only on a 2-year deal. Sure, go ahead and get your some lottery ticket, maybe somewhat mid-level contributor. I understand those moves there, but we're talking about foundational pieces. This will bleed into the Luis Robert discussion here. What are you actually building your house on, right? Because we saw the foundation come crumbling down on rebuild 2.0. It would be nice to have a couple of those pillars, wouldn't it, Steve, that have actually proven it at the major league level and that are still under control for multiple more years with this team that you can then supplement and start building around? That is my, long-term big picture view of actually building this thing back up into some form of contention in hopefully by 2026, right? 2027. We're hoping that's the next timeline for that in my mind. Whereas if you trade these guys now, you're talking about another full scale. And we are sure this is going to be a historically bad season. You might see a little bit marginal improvement in terms of the win-loss record, but you're still then kicking that can further down the road with less certainty in terms of your roster construction. That's my whole view on the situation.
I agree with that 100%. When you have good players that you can build around, this mindset and this stigma, I think, that has unfortunately plagued this fan base and many other fan bases is that, you have to look to trade guys. It doesn't make sense here, for a variety of different reasons that I outlined previously. So Garrett Crochet is somebody that you should be building around, because this is the type of performances that you are getting out of him. These are what you were hoping to get out of guys like Drew Thorpe, like Noah Schultz. But those are unproven commodities. Garrett Crochet is doing it right now. He's exceeded any expectations that I had for him as a starting pitcher. I'm going to own it. I was wrong. I didn't think that this transition to the starting rotation was going to go well. He's made me look a fool, and I'm happy about that. Like you were talking about earlier at the beginning part of the show, you don't like being wrong about things if it's going to be detrimental to, the White Sox and to their overall performance here. I love being wrong if it means it's better for the White Sox, because that's going to be better for my overall mood and my enjoyment of watching this team. I was wrong about Garrett Crochet. I want to keep seeing it. I love watching dominant starting pitching. And you think about yesterday here, he gives up 3 runs in 6 innings, and that was like the worst start he's had in like 6 weeks. Like that's what we're doing here. And this is the guy we're talking about moving. if there's not injury concerns, what the fuck are we doing here?
Right? Yeah, it's his birthday tomorrow. You know what, Steve? I was talking with a couple buddies down the road. I would like to see if they could possibly work out an extension to keep him here even longer. Granted, that plays on some of the questions that you had brought up and what Minadar had brought up previously with the question that we appreciate about what's the injury history. These are all factors that you have to take into consideration. So they'll know the fine details of that. But if that checks out, this is somebody that you want to keep around. So I would be kicking that idea down the around more so than the trade. And what kind of flashy prospects can we get for him? Another guy in this camp, Steve, is Luis Robert Jr. And we touched on him as well on our last show. But this is another one that I feel like we're in the same camp on here. And I understand the allure of it, and especially with the health issues. Once again, here it's the White Sox. It wouldn't be the White Sox. We're not talking about some sort of injury issues, right? But when healthy, we know the star level ability. And I think last year is just the first taste of it, because it's a true 5-tool player. Once again, is any of those prospects, are they going to turn into that? Are you going to get that? Well, you already know you have it here and it's under control then, through 27. I will like that. That's a good foundational piece that I had just raved about previously.
Yeah, to me, the only difference with the Luis Robert situation, and I'm going to go back to my position going back to March of this year, you have 13 months to get this thing on track. The decision Robert made to switch agency to Scott Boras at the beginning of the season, that did change the calculus here. Okay. So the idea of the White Sox signing him to a long-term extension when his option years are up after the 2027 season, unless there's a change in the ownership of this team, I would say they're less than 0%. So the clock is ticking on Luis Robert in a White Sox uniform, unfortunately here. With all of that being said, if you do get development out of some of the prospects here, if you can have savvy free agent signings, if Chris Getz can be better at scouring that mid-tier market than what Rick Hahn was, if you reasonably think you can be one of, you don't even have to be one of, all you have to do is be the number 3 wild card in 2026. If you think you can do that, if you think by next July you can be in position to, in 2026, be the number 3 wild card, you hold on to Luis Robert and you give yourself 2 shots to do this thing. You give yourself 2 chances to be the Texas Rangers, who just a year ago won a World Series as, like, were they the number 5 or the number 6 seed? Like we had a World Series last year of a number 5 versus a number 6. It can happen, okay? I know we're Sox fans. It's perpetual doom and gloom with us. It's, the organization has brought this upon us, but it can happen. And if you do things right, if you make savvy moves, if you get development, and you can be in that position to just be that number 6 team in 2026, you keep Luis Robert and you give yourself a fucking chance twice with a superstar.
I like superstar players, and it takes a while then, if you're acquiring prospects, then for that development to pan out. And like I said, you are kicking that can down the road, that timeline down the road. We've suffered enough through this. So some known commodities would be nice to help bolster this group. That is because there is a wave. Don't get me wrong. I understand it in the returns from Cease, from some of the trades that they made last year at the deadline. But like I said, pillars, foundation. Steve Stone's own words, right? When he was talking about the house, I can go back to that and look at how that failed and blew up in their face. Well, let's do it differently this time. Chris Getz the meme, I'm different. Let's actually see that in practice. That's what I'd like to see.
I agree. I mean, this team hasn't had a superstar since Frank Edward Thomas Jr. That's a long fucking time, and yeah, they signed Albert Bell after the 1996 season. So you had 2 guys, but I mean, fuck, that's 25 years ago. 25 years ago. That's a long time for a team in a major market. And, Navi brings up a great point here, when he says the fact that The fact people think you need to trade a guy just because he's a Boris client speaks volumes about the owner. Everybody knows how I feel about Jerry Reinsdorf. I've made that very crystal fucking clear, but it is so true. And it speaks to how poorly run this organization is. It speaks to the poor business model that when you have a guy like Luis Robert Jr., a top 10 to 15 talent in the sport when he is healthy, that you have to think about these things. You have to think about the controllable aspect of it because Scott Boras exists, because you're not even going to entertain a discussion with him. That sucks.
Yeah, it's very sad. Very sad. I really hope, like I said, you get something out of those last years. It would be nice to be making a charge in those last 2 years that Luis Robert would be here should he stay through the duration of that contract. But we'll see. Once again, we're probably going to bring this up on every show moving forward, just because there's going to be new tidbits of information that come out, whether it be this week was Ken Rosenthal. Who knows if next week it's John Heyman, and you get your Joel Sherman, and it doesn't matter. It's going to keep
got 6
happening,
weeks left of this.
There's going to be no end in sight. And it was funny because I saw it was one GM's comment. I don't know if it was anonymous or not, but it was essentially that all these rumors and rumblings are, kind of humorous to people within front offices, because it's not going to happen until like that last 72 hours before the deadline. We'll be here for all of it. Stay tuned at Sox on Tap. All right, you talked about poor management from the ownership box, from the general manager's chair. Let's bring it down to the field level, because Oscar Colas has basically been relegated to the bench after showing a little bit of improvement with a little more consistent playing time. However, Noodle Boy Andrew Benintendi comes back from the IL. You got Tommy Pham back as well. So Corey Jokes still in the mix, and here we are. Brings up Mike's question. Can either of you explain why Oscar Colas isn't playing 7 nights a week? I'm so confused. This is Mr. Clean special, in my opinion.
I can think of 75 million reasons why. I mean, it's pretty simple. At the end of the day, he's going to follow the directive of the only person that is going to employ him at the major league level. And he's not going to sit Noodle Boy on the bench when he's the highest paid player in the history of this franchise, regardless of how bad he is and how much he has proven he does not deserve to be in the lineup. I don't care if he hit a fucking home run last night. It doesn't mean anything to me. We know what he is. He is a sunk cost. He is not helping this team in any way. In the postgame show last night, Frank was talking about, he's not this bad. He kind of is. He kind of is at this point. He's getting progressively worse, in fact. I mean, there's no real signs of life. Okay, yeah, he hits one home run every couple of weeks, but then he just goes out there and the at-bats are just piss poor. The contact is so weak consistently. You've got a guy like Oscar Colas that you and I have both been very critical of on this show, and for justifiable reasons. There have been some noticeable improvements that you can see visibly watching him in his approach. Do we ultimately know what Oscar Colas is? No, we don't. Do we have, I think, some inclinations about what we think he's going to be? I would say, yeah, but find out. We know what Andrew Benintendi is. We know that the next time that this team is relevant, he's not going to be playing a role in this. So get Oscar Colas on the field. There's obviously something there with him and Mr. Clean, why he won't give him a more consistent opportunity. I don't think we're really going to know what that is unless Colas is no longer part of this organization. And then, some of the beat writers then will kind of leak things out, or you'll hear from anonymous clubhouse sources and things. But it really is exhausting to think that you have a guy that is, he's 23, 24 years old, has a relatively small sample size at the big league level, albeit not a good one. But we're not even giving him a chance to see if there has been enough improvement to warrant him being in future discussions about being on this team.
You know what irks me is I understand, I understand this as a stock response. We come in here and prepare and try to win a baseball game today. That's Pedro's line. You even friggin' heard it from Luis Robert today, right? I understand the generalities of that because what can you say? No, it sucks showing up to the ballpark. I mean, that'd be real, but we know you can't say that. But just from a management standpoint, you understand you can go and anyone has access to MLB.com or a local newspaper to see where the White Sox are in the standings. This is the perfect time to throw it out there and find out. And guess what? If you don't want to do it every day, which we'd prefer to see that, to just at least figure out what you have, right? At least start doing some alternation of some sort to get them in there instead of just riding pine after playing consistently for a couple of weeks because some of these veterans were injured. I just wish there was a little bit of logic to that. Like, we all know what the situation is. No one would blame you for losing a game if Oscar Colas, had a bad strikeout or made a bad read on a ball in the outfield there. It'd be like, okay, now we either this affirmed what we knew about Oscar Colas or it's, what Andrew Benintendi is going to fumble the same thing. And he's just got to be out there because he's paid higher. That just irks me from just a logical standpoint. This is the time to go and figure these things out. It'd be much, much different. Say Andrew Benintendi was actually competent, just average competent, and you were in the chase for a wild card or even, sitting closer to 500, right? But that's not the case. We all know that it's historically bad. So let the young guys figure it out. I just wish there was some logic on that front. But, once again, this is Mr. Clean we're dealing with here. So that's what you get. And that, I think, answers your question, Mike. All right, Steve, let's move it on to a little more broad general topic MLB-wise here. RIP to a legend. Willie Mays passed away. It was right before the Rickwood game. Plenty of touching tributes during all of that. But hey, Steve, you talk about five-tool players. We were talking about that with Luis Robert earlier. This was, definition five-tool player, Willie Mays.
The guy that is widely regarded as possibly the greatest player to ever live. And you think about all the accomplishments, a 24-time All-Star, won an MVP in 1951, 660 home runs. And this is after missing 2 full seasons to serve in the Korean War. I mean, he missed the 1952 and 1953 seasons. If he has those on his docket, he's the guy that passes Babe Ruth, not Hank Aaron. So you think about that. Obviously, you think about it, the memorable catch in the 1954 World Series when they beat 116-win Cleveland Indian team. Darn, you just hate to fucking see that happen, don't you?
Too bad.
Yeah, it's just a damn shame, real damn shame here. And somebody that is just revered. I mean, you're talking about, when you think about the Hall of Fame, you hear people talk about inner circle Hall of Fames. Willie Mays is in that inner circle right there. Regardless of whomever you're talking to, anybody that is a historian, anyone that has followed this game, that loves this game and understands the history of it, he is someone that is always immediately brought up as one of the greatest players to ever live. And so to have him, pass away at 93 years old it stinks for the game of baseball. And to see it happen 2 days before this game at Rickwood Field down in Birmingham, Alabama, in celebration of the Negro Leagues, a place that Willie Mays played before reaching his time with the New York Giants. And then interesting little side note here that I don't know if a lot of our listeners are going to know about. The Sox actually had a scout in the late 1940s by the name of Josh Donaldson. Not that Josh Donaldson, but a different, more respectable Josh Donaldson that they had employed actually to kind of serve as a conduit and a scout of the various Negro League players during that time frame. And Josh Donaldson had actually recommended to White Sox ownership that they sign 3 players. The 3 players that he recommended: Hank Aaron, Ernie Banks, and Willie Mays. Can you imagine if those guys would have been a part of the 1950s era Go-Go Sox, a team that struggled to hit the ball out of the ballpark, didn't have a ton of offense? You have 1,800, 1,900 home runs out of those 3 guys. Even if you just put one of those guys in the lineup, if it was Willie Mays, can you imagine an outfield of Willie Mays, Jim Landis and Minnie Minoso patrolling cavernous Comiskey Park in the 1950s, how different history might be.
Wow. I mean, you're, talking about, I'm looking up here at the drought, Southsiders N88, your drought. I've got the paper framed. You're talking about possibly multiple championships in that 1950s window. Obviously got there 59, but before then, you'd said that would be quite the outfield there.
And I can tell you, back in 2018, I actually went down to Birmingham to watch the Barons. I actually saw Dylan Cease pitch when he was working his way through the system. And I actually, went outside and saw Rickwood Field when it was under construction at the time. They were doing some renovations and restoration of it. So I didn't have the opportunity to actually go inside the stadium there. But it's the oldest ballpark in America. It's older than Fenway. It's older than that other place in Chicago. You think about the history there with all the, the Negro League players. You think about the MLB barnstorming players. Babe Ruth played there, Ted Williams, Stan Musial, a host of other Hall of Famers and legends to play on that field right there. So I think it is a really cool event that Major League Baseball is actually doing. So I actually have to praise Manfred.
Yeah,
for this one.
Yeah, no, it was. It really is cool. I've got the Rickwood game up here, watching it now. It was cool to see how they, did everything. You talked about some renovations there. Dimensions obviously brought into a more modern style here, but it was cool to see Brendan Donovan in the first inning, jack one out, and then you saw some of the old timey, advertisements on the wall there, all the production that they did, and obviously the tributes to Willie Mays were excellent there. So I look forward to watching the end of this one after we get off of this show here. We're winding down on this episode of Sox on Tap. We appreciate everybody who's been with us here in the comments. If you want to join, go over to YouTube at On Tap Sportsnet there. Steve, as we wrap up, we take a look at what's on tap next, per usual, and it's a 3-game series up in Motor City. First visit there this season. The Tigers are 34-40, fourth in the AL Central, 3-7 in their last 10, and they just got swept by your Barbs. Weekend series here. Fetty will kick it off against Jack Flaherty, who's having a nice season for them. Drew Thorpe goes again Saturday against Kenta Maeda. Hope the Sox can get him some run support there. And then the finale will be Mr. Jonathan Cannon, who we sung his praises earlier in the show, versus Reese Olson. So, Steve, what do you think about this weekend series up in Motown?
I like the pitching matchups actually with this series here, and I'm going to do something crazy. I think the Sox are going to take 2 out of 3. I just feel something in my loins.
In your plums.
And maybe that's just my internal instinct of hating all things Detroit and wanting to see just bad things happen to them. But I feel something here. And it would be very nice to see this Sox team go up there and actually win a series, because as we all know, Detroit sucks.
Detroit sucks. Detroit sucks. I can hear the chants at the UC. Hey, we even did it when the Sox were actually in their little window there. But I heard those chants coming down railways outside of the rate back in 2021 as well. So I agree. Detroit sucks. Kenta Maeda also sucks, and so does Reese Olson. Jack Flaherty will probably, I think, take it on Friday night. So I'll say a loss in the opener. White Sox touched up Kenta Maeda. It'll depend on Drew Thorpe, and let's see how that goes. And then I would imagine he's not going too long. Even if he does have a good outing, I would imagine no more than 6. Let's be realistic. It's probably 5, right? But the Sox did touch up Kenta Maeda. If you remember, that second game of the year went by the wayside because of, like we talked about, started of this show, no relief. That was a theme early on, just emerging there. But then Sunday, Jonathan Cannon, I feel confident about that one. I'm going to go 1 here. I'm just going to go 1, and I just have a feeling that the Sox will build a lead. They're going to lose Friday, Jack Flaherty. They'll build a lead Saturday, and then it'll go by the wayside with that bullpen. I'm just expecting it, numbing myself to it at this point. But I have faith. Jonathan Cannon, especially versus Reese Olson, his numbers are a bit gaudy on the ERA front there. So I'll go 1 out of 3 here, but I do think the Sox can get to Kenta Maeda because that's a washed signing for the Detroit Tigers, and they deserve to be where they are for counting on him as even their 3-4.
Yeah, I mean, he's been absolutely terrible. I mean, you go back a couple of years ago, back when he was pitching for the Twins, and he was actually giving Sox hitters fits for a period of time there. What a difference a couple of years makes at this point, and it would certainly be nice if Mr. Luis Robert Jr., did what he did that second game of the season and hit a couple balls over that fencing that they set up prior to the game. And, I would love to roll some R's. It's been a little while here, so let's make that happen here.
Yeah, Steve, you're talking about that second game of the year. He deployed the multi-home run strategy by himself. And then he even got some help. They even had a few others in that game. So I'd like to see that. It always seems like such a poke at Comerica Park up there in Detroit, but I feel like some of the games, maybe it's just us going up there in the summer at a good time when the ball is traveling and can carry in the air there. But I feel like there have been home runs on both sides of this there. So I honestly, even for the ballpark, I expect fairly high scoring series in this one. Maybe not the opener, but this is a series. I could see it. I could see it happening. So I'll go with one. You got two. I like you predicting a series win. That might be the first time all year, perhaps. It's been a while, but we like it. We like to change it up here at Sox on Tap. We're getting close to closing this one down. So hit me with some final thoughts before we roll on out.
Final thoughts are this. Let's just continue to see some development out of the young pitching staff at this point in the season here. That's kind of what we are watching for at this point. The likes of Jonathan Cannon, Drew Thorpe, and continued success out of Garrett Crochet. Don't trade him. Don't trade him. Don't trade him. So let's get that rolling here a little bit. And, just go up to Detroit and beat the Tigers. I fucking hate those sons of bitches. Find a way to go win a series, please, for the love of God.
Yeah. I'll keep it on, my last thought on the last one was bullpen wise that I, didn't like, nor did I trust any of them. I still hold true to that belief because they're going to have to do a lot to turn it around. But at some point, they need to pick up their starting pitching. And it is, there's a skill issue there. I do understand that. This is not your Rick Hahn overpay on the bullpen days, although that does, when you see some of these leads slip away, it does make you want to harken back to that just a little bit in that moment, right? I understand that. But it's about, a sense of pride, being a good teammate too, right? I'm going to, nut up and get the job done for my guy who just went out there and threw 6 innings of 2-run ball with, 8-9 strikeouts. And that's the type of outing that they could get from an Eric Fetty, from a Jonathan Cannon here. Shit, even Drew Thorpe could have himself a nice day. I mean, he limited the Mariners offense in his first outing for the most part. So please just have a sense of pride and pick those guys up, because guess what? You've already owed a lot of steak dinners and beers and all of that for your transgressions against them. How about just repay it on the field so you don't even have to get to that point? Let's just see that. So that's my final thought for this show. We appreciate everybody tuning in and joining the comments. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube at On Tap Sportsnet. Follow us on the other socials at Sox On Tap and at On Tap Sportsnet. And as always, check out OnTapSportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports, literature, and podcasting needs. That'll do it for Season 6, Episode 20 of Sox On Tap. Until next time, White Sox forever.
White Sox for life.